Alrighty. I should be streaming now. Let's see. Let me check. Let me check if that is working. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Mikhail Alexyenko here. Hold on a second. Why can't you see my face? You should be seeing my face now. Hold on a second. My apologies. Yes, I think you should be seeing my face now. Okay, thank you for joining. I will do a little bit of talking first because maybe not all people would join because I didn't really have time to tell you what the stream is about and to give you a heads up. So today I'm gonna talk a little bit about chess in general, but mostly I'll be talking about Stockfish LcZero. As you may know from my previous streams, they played a super final with long classical time control some time ago, and LcZero like +5, it's got crushing advantage over Stockfish. I think the reason is because they had a long time control. With longer time control, LcZero, in my humble opinion, is better than Stockfish because it has better understanding of strategy. It was still failing occasionally, missing like difficult tactics, sometimes not too difficult tactics, I would say. But nevertheless, it was way better in pawn chains when pawn chains are in the center in a strategical play. So at least so far, how I see these engines, Stockfish and LcZero. So I'm using both of them in my analysis. So I'm trying to be objective as I can be. Because, well, I don't want to have preferences. I want to know weak and strong sides of each engine and what can I do with it to improve my analysis and to improve my own understanding of chess. So I see Stockfish as a gifted, talented, young player. It can calculate very quickly, very accurately, really long, complicated lines. However, it is not so good at understanding pawn structures, strategical concepts, and misevaluating the positions that are actually bad. It thinks it's good. So there are plenty of examples where Stockfish gives zeros and LcZero gives huge advantage to one of the sides. And if you look with a human eye, you would see that LcZero is better at understanding that. So I think that's why the shorter time control, the better would Stockfish be, because as you can see from my screen at the moment, is that, well, TCEC Cup is usually held, this is a knockout tournament of very powerful engines, but they are playing rapid. You can see the time control was 30 minutes plus 5 seconds, and it was a knockout, like a World Cup between engines. And they were using very good, still using very good power. So for example, here Stockfish, even though it was rapid, it was always playing at depth 40. This is enormous depths, as you can see. And so I think the shorter time control benefits Stockfish. And that's why it won in 4 games. I'm guessing that was the regulation, to have 4 games in the final or at any stage of the match. And that's why Stockfish won, because it calculated way faster and way better and way more accurately. For example, so it was considering hundreds of millions positions, 100 million nodes per second, and it was thinking for 38 seconds. How many billion is this? 5.7 billion nodes was considered. Enormous amount. And that's why I think Stockfish won this match and this game, the game number 1. We'll get into details shortly. But I think the time control benefited Stockfish. And also so they were forced to play this line, which is not a very good line for black, because white just completely controls the center and has an easy development, very good position. Right, so huge advantage for white, and the position is an open one. And in the game numbers 3 and game number 4, they were forced to play this position, which is also an open dynamic position. There are no pawns in the center, nothing is happening. As you may remember from my previous videos, in one position, when LcZero was playing Stockfish, LcZero won with white as well as with black, and that was a French defense, actually a dubious line of French defense, and LcZero managed to win with both colors, which I find amazing. So I think if they would swoop in some closed pawn center here, LcZero would have bigger chances, but here they chose only open positions, and Stockfish is better in those open positions compared to LcZero. You may note that for your future hypothetical analysis. So as you can see, the score was +1 for Stockfish out of 4 games. So Stockfish won the Super Cup, or whatever the name is, but that was rapid, and there was only 4 games, 2 positions, and so I don't think it means that Stockfish is actually better. And now I want to see the specifics. I would do this. Nope, not this. I turned myself off. My apologies. And now I'm gonna be... Oh my goodness, what am I doing? I need to move my face right here. That would be better. Okay. So now what we're gonna do... I'm gonna zoom out myself a little bit. What we're gonna do is we're gonna discuss the game in detail and why Stockfish won. So they started here, and I want to comment on all the moves, give my understanding of what went wrong for LcZero and at which point. Many of the games that LcZero lost in Classical Championship was because of time trouble, and when it was short on time, it couldn't calculate as fast and as good as Stockfish can do with hundreds of millions positions per second. Like in 1 second, it can calculate a lot, unlike LcZero. So LcZero needs time to get to the bottom of tactics. It doesn't need time to get to the bottom of strategical positions. It just, in a second, it can tell you the right evaluation. However, when it comes to long calculation, long precise calculation, LcZero is not so good. So let's see what happened. Rook c1. Oh yeah, Rook c1, bishop h5, castle. White is simply developing pieces. h3, useful move. So since white controls the center, white is dominating here in the center, white can afford to play such chess as you will see now. g4. This is something you can learn from engines. If you control the center so well, you can afford to go g4. Black could never afford to go h6, g5 here, just because black has 0 control over the center. When I say the center, I usually mean these 8 squares. Well, the center is 4 squares, which white dominates also. So g4, bishop g6, and knight d2. White wants to put even more pawns in the center. White can afford to do that, and there's not much LcZero can do about that. So it goes b5, it seeks counterplay, bishop moves back, knight goes to d7 to have possible f6, bishop f7 to escape with the, or f5, because that bishop could have been trapped. So takes, queen is developed, king slightly improves white's position, h6, f4, more space. So I love all the moves that Stockfish is doing in this particular game. I can explain, I can understand all of them, and I have this misleading feeling that it seems like, yeah, of course I can do it myself. I can do it myself for sure. There's nothing special happening here. In fact, it is, but we'll see it in a second. f6, f5, white gets, okay. For the record, if queen takes, bishop f7, queen f5, g6, the queen is lost. So if anyone was wondering, the pawn was poisoned one. f5, takes, bishop goes to f7, queen goes back to d1, queen did its job. Now white dominates the center, like 3 pawns in the center, black has 0. So now castle, and now it's time to what to do next. Well, e5, e6 could be one of the plans, but there's an open g file, and black's king is in trouble, so white moves the queen. Well, you don't want to lose your bishop, so takes, rook goes to g1. White is actually ready to give up 2 bishops, which I find a little bit surprising, but well, I must admit, since Stockfish knows what it's doing. in this particular game. Queen d2 kicking the bishop, and now bishop takes h6. Let me see if I think this is something that LcZero, so I'm gonna go back to the website. It says you can check TCEC / or -chess.com. You can see what the engines were expecting, what lines they were considering. So let me see if LcZero was actually considering bishop h6, which is actually quite a typical sacrifice. If the king is exposed, you should always keep an eye on yeah, actually, if knight d3 was something that Stockfish anticipated a knight d3, queen d2 in advance. However, LcZero was expecting queen d1. LcZero was expecting queen d1 in this position, moves the bishop and play king h1. Well, it was aiming for something like this, and my guess it blundered bishop h6, and white got an extra pawn, although LcZero's evaluation didn't change that much, which I find surprising. White just wins the pawn, so that pawn must be poisoned if takes. Let's see what is going on. I guess queen takes, and that's it. So king can never move because it's checkmate, and otherwise the next move is moving the king, and that is it. So rook went to f7, white king goes to the center, which says a lot about white's advantage here. So white is not winning yet, surprisingly to me, but it's a difficult position to play for black, because white controls the center, white has an extra pawn, and white keeps attacking on the g-file. Rook goes to g4 to have a possibility of doubling rooks. Now bishop comes back, queen e2 just in case to keep an eye on this one. Rook d8, king f2. And these moves I don't really follow, but the king was no longer safe on f3, that's my guess. c5, so LcZero seeks desperately the counterplay, because if black doesn't do much, white would double rooks, and then slowly h4, h5, h6 should decide eventually. So black needs counterplay, that's why c5. Let me see what was the evaluation of Stockfish, because I find it very interesting. So here Stockfish was giving around 1.6, 1.8, 1.9, and LcZero was giving only around +1. So white actually takes another pawn and has 2 extra pawns now, but the position opened up a little bit and black has good counterplay. Although this bishop is completely stacked, so I'm not sure what's gonna happen next for that bishop. So when you have extra material, you want to exchange a little bit. Rook d1, exchanging some material. Bishop d3, queen a2 check, bishop comes back, queen a1, you don't want your queen to be attacked, and keeping an eye on the a file, and the knight on d1 was hanging, so queen a1, bishop f7, queen b1. I don't really follow this move, so I think maybe here something went wrong for a little bit for Stockfish. Let me see if the evaluation decreased. No, the evaluation is still around +2 from Stockfish, and the evaluation from LcZero is around +1. So it's not a win yet. Queen goes to the center, queen h2 was threatening, so king g2, rook to a8, rook wants to go to a1, queen d3, bishop goes to c4, queen d7, rook to a2. Suddenly all black's pieces come inside white's position, and LcZero gives only 0.8 for white, and Stockfish gives more than +2. So, and I do believe Stockfish in such open dynamic positions more, and especially it was giving a depth, oh my goodness, depth 55. That's like, you almost never see this kind of depth in the middle game from when one is analyzing with Stockfish ever, you know. You have to wait for a really long time to get to the depth like that. So knight f2, and I do believe that Stockfish is right here, because white has 2 healthy extra pawns. There's nothing black can take at the moment. Black plays without the bishop basically, and white just needs time to coordinate pieces, or even just start rolling with the pawn. So black is seeking counterplay, queen a1, queen wants to go to f1, centralizing the queen, queen e1, rook g3, white needs to protect this bishop to free the queen again, king h7. At some moment here, Stockfish already gave +3. Yep. Somewhere here, Stockfish says that king 2. Wait a second. Queen e1. Queen e1. Forgive me a second. Queen e1. Queen d4. Stockfish was expecting queen e1, and after rook g3 it was expecting rook c2 here for some reason. Rook c2, I don't understand this move. And after king h7, king h2, it already calculated it's +3. And basically there's nobody to stop the c pawn. Rook e2, the pawn just goes, the pawn just goes, bishop f7, which is quite surprising because Stockfish already gives more than +3 here, and somewhere here LcZero understand that this is a lost position. Now e5, another pawn is being pushed, takes, queen b6, protecting an important pawn, and now this knight would have squares to go to. f6 is coming, queen f1, rook is coming to h4. So here basically white gave up one pawn. I don't fully understand all the moves because this is like really difficult stuff from the engines. Sam says he enjoys my engine videos, and Emmett agrees with that. Thank you guys, I appreciate it a lot. All right, e4, bishop wants to go to d6, bishop f4, protecting the pawn and the king, e3 with some counterplay, queen, rook takes, and knight jumps to e4. This is like really difficult. But now two bishops are hanging, knight is coming to g5. I think Stockfish is already giving +5 or something. Yeah, more than +5, which is another screenshot that I wanted to give to my Facebook or YouTube page. Here in this position, after move 53, wait a second, move 53, after rook coming back to g2, evaluation of Stockfish is more than +6. More than +6. So it already figured it out. It's a win, you know. The pawn is going, extra pawn for white, all pieces are in the game, and LcZero still gives 0.7. 0.7. So it's LcZero is completely wrong about this one. Amit is asking, do I think a player around 1400 FIDE should look at engine games or real players games? And Sam says, focus on tactics and play lots of games, I'd say. Higher up, study games. Looking at engine games is useless. Just, I would say, no, there's not much you can learn. Just watching the games doesn't help much. Actually, this Saturday, I'm gonna have, hopefully, I'm gonna have online training camp for up to 12 students about how to study chess for players below 1900 ELO, approximately, how to study chess properly, what to do, what not to do, how to do tactics, how to study openings. And on that list of things to do, there's never a list of watching. I think watching engine games could be beneficial for very strong players to see new ideas. So for example, in this, I think it's still in progress, I might be wrong, LcZero, some version of LcZero for CPUs, is playing with Stockfish, and they have some very interesting opening ideas, but I think it's not useful just watching the games. So if you want to learn more, you can check the description in my YouTube video where you can read more about the online camp. It's gonna be about how to study tactics and how to study openings for up to 1900 ELO. You're welcome to subscribe for that camp. It's not free, unlike my YouTube videos. All right, so +6 from Stockfish in this position. This is amazing. And LcZero still gives 0.78. I think it has something to do. They had very little time to think here. It's rapid game, and LcZero cannot calculate so quickly as Stockfish can. Bishop is coming to f4, queen, knight to e4, at which I need to really check at which point did LcZero finally realize, yeah, it started to give more than +2 after Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, I didn't see it when preparing for the stream. Queen takes e3. Stockfish gives here already plus 18. Plus 18, so it says it's completely winning. There's no zero chance for black, which I find it quite interesting because white no longer have extra pawn. It's black to move. It is not obvious to me what is the threat at the moment. Like if it was white to move, I'm guessing queen is coming to g3, bishop is coming to e5, and basically the king would be completely crushed because white has all the pieces in the attack as well as the pawn on f5 that is ready to join the attack any moment now. And LcZero still gives +2. Oh my goodness, I did not see this one. After rook c6, bishop to e5, evaluation from Stockfish is 148 pawns. 148.85. I want to show you this for a second because I didn't expect this one to happen. 148 and LcZero 2.4. This is amazing. This is amazing. So Stockfish already, like shortly it would give probably mate in a few moves. And LcZero still think that this is not a completely lost position yet. Unbelievable. Bishop f8, f6, g6, knight is coming. So basically white moves all the pieces and crushes the king. I just want to check when Stockfish already gives as mate in something. Oh, mate in 51, m51. I'm guessing that means, well, let's see. M51, mate in 51 moves or in 51 nodes, half moves. I'm not 100% certain about that. And LcZero still is struggling to understand what's happening. So Stockfish is much better in open positions. We have same number of material, but all white's pieces are in the attack. There's nobody to guard the pawn. Queen takes the pawn, another check. Quiet move rook e2, unbelievable. Queen a8 check. Another check, capture, check, check. The queen is lost. Well, and this is embarrassing. So they did finish the game with the mate. So that was a crushing win by Stockfish, although in a rapid game, so that doesn't really count. Mate in 51. Does it mean that's the quickest mate? Just the best Stockfish sees. Yes, that's true. That's correct. If you make one more move, it can say, oh yes, I found the faster one. Nevertheless, clearly winning position for white, and LcZero, it took a few moves and a little bit of time to figure out that it's a mate. All right, game number 2, where LcZero had the same position but with white. It also played rook c1, bishop h5, castle, bishop e7, h3, castle. So LcZero, when playing with black, played a6 and b5, if you can remember, just now that we checked. Stockfish decided to castle, and which makes sense, more sense from human point of view, I would say. It doesn't look like white will have a crushing attack after all. And Stockfish was expecting g4 and still knight d2. So Stockfish was expecting knight d2 with the idea of f4, same idea. But LcZero decided to take 2 bishops, and which also makes sense in the evaluation. So I find it really funny because Stockfish gives 0.83 after knight d2 and only 0.4 something in this position. So from Stockfish's perspective, that was a mistake. Stockfish says it was a mistake to capture, and it says you shouldn't have captured the bishop. It's not going anywhere apparently, because dc5, if you take with the bishop, I'm guessing g5 is the problem. And you cannot keep both pieces alive. And so Stockfish says you should take on c5, and after takes, queen c7. Still +1 from Stockfish, but so okay, this one is again very difficult. I would do my best to explain what I see here, but it would be hard, I must admit. So white has 2 bishops. However, the king is a little bit compromised. The dark squares are weak. Sorry, that's not important. Dark squares are weak, and black needs to win back the pawn, and then black would be fine. So queen c7, attacking the pawn. Knight b5, counterattacking the queen. Queen goes to the center. Now this and this is hanging. Knight goes to d6. Enormous knight. Takes, takes, and takes. So black did win back the pawn. Yeah, so both engines give around +1 for white. So I would say it's a sensible way to play for white. I would probably do it myself. I enjoy having two bishops. Even if I screw up the center, I still have two bishops to claim advantage, right? But apparently knight d2 here was a better way to go, because apparently this bishop would be completely stuck, and that would be a huge problem for black. So now it was a very long game. Knight takes e4, pawn goes to d7. Rook a to d8, developing the rook. Bishop takes the pawn. You need to capture material pawn on d7, most likely would be lost shortly. Knight covering up the d file. Queen d4. It is very important to exchange queens for white, because white's king is exposed, and I can only imagine these guys coming in like this and then queen joining. That would be a mate. So queen and knight, especially two knights, is extraordinarily dangerous combination. Not a combination, pair of pieces. They coordinate really well. So queen goes to d4, takes, takes, and rook takes d7. And now white has a classical advantage of two bishops in an endgame, where the play is on both sides of the board. So white has a risk-free, long-term advantage. However, Stockfish is really good, and LcZero couldn't convert it. So rook goes to the center, rook goes to a file, f kicking the knights away, protecting the pawn, attacking the rook a little bit. King g2, like in that game Stockfish also, that's a useful move if there's no white squared bishop. There was a check on f4, but I think the knights would be stuck here. So you cannot take with this knight, because f4 would be a problem. Not now, because of check. But I guess after takes, takes, f4 should win. One knight. And taking with another knight, I think the knight would be lost after this move. And both knights are paralyzed. So basically the pawn was not hanging. Rook goes to the center. So I'm just gonna check at which point. Oh yeah, somewhere here Stockfish was giving already 0.4, which I find too little advantage there in Stockfish's point of view, but who am I to judge? Stockfish is really good at calculating. So somewhere here, Stockfish's evaluation is around 0.4. I find it very misleading, because this is extraordinarily difficult to play for black. All right, not for Stockfish, I suppose. So white needs to create a distant passed pawn, eventually. That's the only way to win the position. So white is shuffling the pieces a little bit. Finally, the pieces look good to me. D-file and bishops are looking in that direction where they're supposed to be looking, and controlling important squares. Bishop c5, bishop e2. I'm not sure what LcZero is doing here, and it doesn't seem that LcZero is sure what to do as well. So bishop are going somewhere. Oh, okay, this is interesting. Okay, sorry, I forgot about this move. So bishop attacks the pawn. Rook e8. Bishop attacks the rook. There's not much to do for black. I need to quickly check what was the Stockfish. Yeah, Stockfish calculated everything. So it was, no human would do it, by the way. Stockfish gives 0.1 in this position, and LcZero gives +1. So no human being would go for this. That's why it's dangerous to study engines. Why would you? Bishop d7, that's it. You lose material. No, there's a counterplay. You give a few checks, you give a few checks, you take the rook, check. You cannot take the here, of course, because of this cover. Check, king goes here, bishop takes. You have to see knight h3, everything else is losing. So this is like very computer stuff. A few more checks, and now you take the rook. So you have to see like 10 moves ahead. So this is unthinkable for a human being. Bishop takes b7, and apparently queen, rook and knight, which is usually not a very good combination, can hold this one, because white's king is always in trouble. And from human point of view, it looks like the pawn will promote, but apparently this is not the case. So bunch of checks. Stopping a6. Is it stopping a6? I'm guessing this would be a draw. I'm guessing this would be a draw, because there's a fork, so the rook cannot be lost, and that's a fortress. So that's why the pawns are not going anywhere. A few checks, king is approaching, a few checks. This is unthinkable. How can you know that the pawn will not promote? But Stockfish can, because it considers literally billions of positions per second. So apparently this is good enough to hold the pawns. You just take that pawn, and you never move the rook because the bishop would escape. And now LcZero was just shuffling pieces. There's nothing white can do anymore, and of course it's a draw. Of course it's a draw, because you can even if you at some point take the rook here, it's enough for black to just take this pawn. This is a theoretical draw. So okay, LcZero was wasting our time a little bit here, and only when it reached 6-piece table base the game was ended. All right, next two games. The position they were forced to play is very unusual one. Almost nobody, on top level nobody plays this line. It is considered, so I think they chose a suspicious line for black. Let me give you a glimpse into what was the position they forced the engines to play. This was the position. This line. So both engines give already big evaluation. For white, I think the point of doing that is because if you don't give huge advantage to white, it's very difficult to win a single game, because they are so good and make really little mistakes. That's why they chose the position with big advantage for white, to improve chances of white player to win. So this was the position, and Stockfish was white here, and it couldn't beat LcZero. So let's see what happened next. It's less fun because the game didn't result in a win. All right, so I'm gonna do my best explaining the moves. So the rook is hanging, so knight d5, bishop to b2, two nice fianchetto bishops. Now it's time to manually castle the king. King goes to g1. White again controls the center completely. Knight is being developed. b5. Black is seeking counterplay. Black is saying, yeah, you can take my bishop, but then the pawn on d4 would be very difficult to hold. Or I can take with the pawn and then push d5, and at least I'm gonna close the center. So Stockfish doesn't go for that. So black badly wants to put at least one pawn in the center. Takes, some pieces get exchanged. And now black can breathe a little easier, I would say, because the problem with not having space is that you don't have room for all your pieces. But if you exchange a couple of those, maybe you don't need all that room, especially if the queens are gonna be exchanged soon. So white is still way better in this position, because white still has a pawn in the center. So the evaluation of Stockfish 0.7, from LcZero 0.6 approximately, but that is not a huge one. And black is also a little bit in trouble because this pawn is on b5. If it was on b6, I think very close to equality, but b5 compromised some squares. So c6 covers the d5 square, king h2, queen goes to b6 to free the way for the rooks. a3, a little weird move, I would say. Human beings don't play like this. I'm guessing this is stopping b4 so that that bishop cannot go into the game. Rook d8, queen c2, finally rooks are connected. h5, this is extraordinary play. I don't think people play like this. It is very typical to play h5 when you have a knight on e5. The point is you're sort of threatening to go h4 and bothers this king. And if your opponent doesn't react, you push h4. And if your opponent does react with h4, then your knight would have a nice square to go to. So white goes, finally rook is being developed. h4 takes, black gives up a full pawn, but now the king is compromised. Bishop is being improved. g5, okay. So the whole point of going h4 is to take control over this square on f4. But it seems impossible because h5 stopped knight g6. So what can black possibly do? You go g5. This is amazing. This is something like very strong players can learn from engines. But If less experienced players see moves like that, they don't understand it, they do it themselves and screw the position up. This is a very dangerous move, because come on, you compromise the king, you weaken this square. This is not good unless it is good. Takes and pawn takes, and now black occupies the f4 square. Queen goes. What I noticed, LcZero almost never had bad pieces. So it's always seeking to improve a bad piece if you have one. Look at every single piece in black's position. Every single piece is active. Yeah, it cost a pawn and compromising the king a little bit, but all the pieces are active. b4, queen goes closer to the king side, knight f1, bishop is being improved, queen is being improved. And now, well, black doesn't have active counterplay, so black should just wait. And Stockfish couldn't do anything about this. Black's knight on e5 is just amazing. You can exchange some pieces, but black is just standing doing nothing, and Stockfish realized that, well, there's not much I can do except give perpetual. So now it's actually black who's playing for a win, I guess. Okay, this is a joke, of course. The king is exposed. A few more checks and they agreed for a draw. So fantastic idea, h5, h4 and g5 by LcZero. It understands the positional aspect of chess way better than Stockfish. It was enough to make a draw here. And now they change colors, and that was the last game of the TCEC Cup. I think that is the proper name, TCEC Cup. Yeah. All right, so same position. Again, bishop b2, e4, knight d7, knight bd2, castle king g1. I think they both had this position. And when LcZero was playing black, it played b5, and Stockfish played e5 immediately, which seems like losing a pawn. Isn't it? Seems like losing the pawn, but the point is, if you take, I think it's bishop to c5, and this d4 square now belongs to black. Let me see, why did Stockfish decide to give up a pawn like this, and what does LcZero think about that? I find this amazing. There's a free pawn and nobody is taking it. e5, so Stockfish was expecting d5, and LcZero did play d5. So I'm not sure what was. Let me run my not very powerful, my own Stockfish to check whether I was right. Bishop c5 and black is better? Wow. Wow, that is nice. Knight is coming to g6. It's very hard to keep this pawn. There's a pin. You cannot improve your king. Wow, that's magnificent. Yeah. That is great. I hope I didn't stop my stream. No, I didn't. Sorry, there are some shortcuts that I can press accidentally. So that's why I think e5 is a great move. d5, knight goes to the center, takes, and black gets two bishops. And the pawn in the center, which most likely would be lost, but at least black would have two bishops. h4, white needs to castle the king. Knight f3 may look logical, but I think the problem is black goes c5. And if you take, it's knight takes, it's two bishops, and then if you take here lots of weak pawns, white needs to complete the development first. So black protects the pawn, rook b1 threatening b4, b5 kicking the knight away, bishop hides from b4, king h2, bishop is going to b7, now two bishops, Rubinstein bishop, I think it's the name, Rubinstein, yeah, I think so. Rook goes to open file, knight is being kicked away, black needs to open the position for the bishops, knight to f4, queen d7, finally connecting the rooks, bishop h3, queen d6, apparently luring the bishop to a worse diagonal, bishop e6 check, king moves, queen goes to h5, maybe Stockfish would move the knight and blunder mate in one, joke of course, cd, ed, queen e5, so black has two bishops, but white dominates on white squares, so white is still pressing here, but let me see if Stockfish agrees with my evaluation. Yeah, Stockfish actually gives more than +1. Both of the engine gives way more than +1 for white in this position. The main problem for black in this position is the weakness of white squares, specifically the e6 one. Queen goes to f3, f5, at least taking some white squares under control. a4, this knight wants to go here. Rook d8, rook e1 with a tempo, takes the pawn, exchange Black managed to take the central pawn. I think Stockfish wouldn't appreciate this one. Yep, the evaluation of Stockfish dropped significantly. Stockfish was saying that after f5, queen d3 was better. And so I do believe Stockfish more in this position because it's an open dynamic one. Some exchanges happened, more exchanges. Black, okay. So this is obviously some combination. Attacking the queen, there's no place to go because you need to control this one. So you have to take, counter-attacking the queen. Queen takes here. Now the queen is hanging and the knight is hanging and it seems lost. No, queen f7 comes with a tempo. You have to take. You take here now. And there's a nice fork. Takes. Rook goes to e8. And here, this is the moment, the moment that I was waiting for is approaching. LcZero gives the evaluation. What's the evaluation of LcZero? 1.7 here. So LcZero gives huge advantage for white, and Stockfish gives 0.7. So way less optimistic. Why queen b7, not queen b6? Why queen d7, not queen d6 directly? Sorry, I missed that question. Luring the bishop to a worse diagonal, apparently. It's not obvious to me. Because, this guy doesn't want to have an opponent here. So apparently black is ready to ask the bishop to go on e6, because knight should go to e6. Usually knight belongs on an outpost. And if the bishop comes here, then the knight on f4 would be a little bit sad about that. So that is my explanation, although it's not very human, I would say, to do it. Usually we don't like our queen bothered by bishops or anyone else. So that's the best explanation that I can give. Bishop goes here, and now this diagonal is compromised, and this knight on f4 has no good place to go. So we reach this area where white has two pieces for rook and the pawn. Two pieces in 99% of cases is better than rook and the pawn. You're welcome. Exception is endgames with lots of open files. So from human point of view, white is of course way better, because the bishop would go to c6, everything is protected, weak pawn on a7, potential weakness on d4, but Stockfish is very good, rook d8, pushing the pawn, black badly needs to exchange a pair of rooks. So if you have two minor pieces, you want to keep an extra rook or a queen in order to have chances to attack the king. That's my understanding. And if you have a rook, fortress is very unlikely. See what happens here. Pieces get exchanged. Now it's full, two pieces for just the rook. But there are so many open files. There's no way to attack that pawn on a7. If white had a rook, that's a possibility, but white needed to remove the passed pawn. So here we are. How can you possibly attack the pawn on a7? It's really difficult. You have to move the bishop and put the knight there, but who's going to guard the pawn on b5? Even if you do that, the rook just stands on a 7th file, 7th rank or a file, and that's it. And black is better on the king side. If you add one more pair of pieces, let's say white has a bishop on e3 and black has a bishop on f6, completely winning for white. Or we add even one pair of knights, that would be a win for white. But without any pieces, this is apparently a relatively easy draw for black. Rook d8, and now king goes to the center. I'm not sure what else. Knight goes to c6, bishop needs to protect the pawn on b5, knight went to c6. What's next? How can white possibly improve in this position? You cannot win without your king. You have to move your king. But where will you go with that king? D file, cutting off the file, and who's gonna stop the potential passer? So here is this the picture. I think it was after move, a little bit after this one. So white goes f4, which simplifies black's task to exchange all the pawns. So black is just waiting and exchanging all the material. White maneuvered the knight to d5 to, well, this is, by the way, a valid plan for a win. You push b6, you exchange these pawns, and then you push another pawn. That makes sense. However, black wins some material on the king side. Who's going to stop the h pawn? Somewhere here, LcZero was giving, I'm going to give you that exact position that I put on the preview of this stream on my YouTube if you're watching on Twitch. This is the position. I'm gonna show you this one. There you go. LcZero gives 1.9 for white. I'm not sure what, yes, it gives 37 chance of win for white, which is a huge percentage. And Stockfish gives zeros. It says, nope, you got nothing here. I calculated everything, nothing is happening. I have a passed pawn, and that's enough for me to hold a draw. So and LcZero was wrong about this one, because endgame is mostly about calculation, and Stockfish is just better at calculating stuff. I'm not sure why didn't LcZero go b6 here. I'm guessing this pawn is way behind, and black would just move the king here, move the rook away, and give, or maybe rook would move here and give bunch of checks, and the king has no place to hide. That's my guess. So it repeated the position a little bit. Rook had to retreat. King h1. This is ridiculous move from LcZero, which sometimes happens to it. Just I don't see any reason to do it. So it repeated the position. Repetition. Finally, king goes to g3. Check. King goes. Another check. Not even taking the pawn. That's nice. Threatening mate. Now taking the pawn. Yeah. Now king goes to stop the pawn, and basically you can stop here, but LcZero was still preferring white a lot. Okay, 1.2, but I think during some of my previous streams somebody mentioned that the formula, the evaluation is not correct. But 1.2 was the evaluation from LcZero, but I don't know, from human point of view, to me it's obvious that that pawn is not going anywhere. It's not enough, even two pieces against a lonely king to push the pawn. It's almost impossible to push the pawn, especially if the rook is attacking stuff. So that's just an easy draw for Stockfish. Okay, the game. Okay, only somewhere here. Oh, hold on a second. I think black should have just stopped. So here Stockfish, white could still do nothing in this position. Sorry, black, of course. Only black is fighting for a draw here. But Stockfish calculated that I'm going to attack the knight, I'm going to give a check, I'm going to push I'm going to come back. The pawn is basically a queen. Another pawn is coming. This pawn is coming. The pawn reached b7, and the bishop is controlling this one. No human being would play like this. It looks very dangerous. Queen, there's b1, it comes with a check. Yeah, it comes with a check, and king takes. Okay, so Stockfish calculated, and now the moment it is 6 pieces on the board, table base hit in, and that is it. So this is my view of what happened in the TCEC Cup. Due to shortened time control and the positions that were forced on the board, Stockfish had an advantage in my point of view. Each engine has its benefits, and yeah. So if you like what you see, you can go ahead to my YouTube channel, like it. If you're watching on Twitch, thank you. In the description for my YouTube video, you can see my course on tactics that you are welcome to buy, but I would say only below 1900. It's useful. Above 1900, it's too easy, I would say. If you want to know how to study your own chess better, check the description, or if you're watching it a week later, it's too late, my apologies. You can read about my training camp online about how to study chess well on your own in these quarantine times, and how to become better after chess returns to actual board. So I guess you would go watch Carlsen Nakamura final. I'm not gonna do it myself, but if you wanna learn from Carlsen Nakamura final of the Carlsen Invitational, try guessing moves. If you're just listening to Peter Svidler suggesting moves, you will not really improve. You would enjoy, but you would not improve. If you want to improve, don't look at the evaluation of the engine. Like, what would I do? And suggest a move, and that's at least the least you can do to make some improvement. because just watching videos, just watching games, just watching and listening to strong players explaining things, that is not enough. You should be the one contributing as well. This way you would learn. Okay, thank you for watching. Take care, subscribe to my channel, click on the bell, tell your friends if you like what you see. Take care, bye bye.